BSL interpretation is an interpretation of a source form of, say for example for this would be a script into British Sign Language, and it would be an interpretation of that script that would be delivered by a sign language interpreter who has trained and qualified. There's a lot that goes into putting on a BSL interpreter performance, from the scheduling to the advertising and all the administration side of locating the correct interpreter, casting the correct interpreter for a show. So for example, if it was a specific type and genre of show, then you would look for an interpreter that has skills and a look to match that particular show. It's really important when the interpreters are prepping that they do a lot of research into the background, the context of the show, and also the delivery that each of the actors give to their particular parts. So what we would tend to do is we would look at what people's relationships are with each other within a show. So it's not just about the script and the story, it's about understanding the concept and the relationships between the actors or between the characters within the show. And we would also do a lot of research into the specific era, so we might use era related signs. We would do a lot of research into how everyone relates to each other for that final outcome of the story, to make it clear and visual for the audience. BSL interpretive performances are crucial for the BSL deaf audience to be able to have access to mainstream theatre. It's not enough to provide captions. It's brilliant to provide captions, but it's not enough, because British Sign Language is a recognised language in its own right. It has its own grammatical structure, which is very different from English. So for example, if you were reading on a caption board the words "that's all very well," for a BSL deaf audience, they would see that English and think it's all okay. You know, they wouldn't necessarily know that the nuance of that is that there's a but coming, or actually it's not all very well, there is an exception to this rule. And with British Sign Language, everything is very visually delivered in a way that uses placement and referencing and role shift and characterization and expression. So it gives a lot of those nuances within the actual delivery, the visual delivery of the language. In practice, if you're going to go to a BSL interpretive performance, you can expect that you will be allocated a seat that will give you the best possible view of the interpreter on the stage. The interpreter will usually be positioned either downstage left or downstage right, which is nearest to the audience, and they will be to one side of the stage. Unless you're talking about an integrated performance. An integrated performance is where sometimes there will be certain shows that will actually rehearse an interpreter into a performance, and so they will move around the stage with actors, or there might be certain spaces where they'll go to that will be set spaces that aren't just specifically at the corner of the stage. What has been my favourite performance to interpret? The million-dollar question. It's a tough one to answer, because every show that I do, I completely absorb, and I love it even if I start out not liking it so much and thinking, well, this isn't necessarily something that I would want to see personally. The more I read the script, the more I do the research, the more I learn about the characters, the more I fall in love with it as a piece of art. And the more I understand it, the more I embody the whole piece. And so everything that I'm working on at any one time, if somebody says to me from one particular show, what's your favourite show? I'll always say the one that I'm on. And that's not because I'm being sycophantic, it's because I genuinely am completely engrossed in that show at that time. I have to learn every single script for every show, because with all of the research elements involved, you can't just stand on stage not knowing what's coming at you for 2.5 to 3 hours for a show. It's exhausting. And without having that background research, you can't anticipate the context of lines that are being said. Without reading the script first, you can't anticipate which lines are very important for the outcome of the Agatha Christie play that you're going to see at the end. Which line is really important for the audience to remember later on when they say, so that's what that meant. Those moments are really, really poignant, and those moments are the really important ones that you had to give across. And there's no way you can do that on the spot without learning the script beforehand. To be able to distinguish between the characters in any specific show, there are a number of things that we look at as interpreters. We look at their characterisation, how they hold themselves, and that could be their posture. It could be whether they've got like very tight shoulders, or they might be a little bit bent over to show that they're slightly, of an older age, and that's a big, very generic sweeping statement. But we do look at how the character presents themselves. We look at how the characters speak. We look at how they walk, and we look at their relationships with each other. And it's very much about, when we're interpreting something, we don't point to the stage to say that person is talking or that person is talking. We will actually take on that character so that the deaf audience already know that it's Bob, or it's Dave, or it's Emily, or whoever it happens to be. They can already tell that particular character within the performance without having to play table tennis and try and catch the performance and miss out on bits. I always get to meet the cast beforehand. I go into a show usually about 2.5 hours before the performance that I'm doing. If I haven't already met them at a point where I've gone to see a show rehearsal watch, so I might have gone to see a show somewhere else to be able to put together what I've learned in the script with what the visuals are on stage. Sometimes I'll try and get backstage and meet everybody at that performance, but if not, I'll see them a couple of hours before the show, usually when the director or the choreographer or somebody might be giving some notes to the cast ready for the performance that evening. They'll introduce me, they'll introduce where I'm going to be standing, so everybody can familiarise themselves with where I'm going to be. And they may also do a little bit of what we call reblocking, and that is where if there's a part of the performance that comes very, very close to where I am, they may slightly reblock that and move the performers in on stage slightly to make sure that I don't, get kicked in the ear or something like that while I'm trying to do my job.
For more information, visit our Access information page at norwichtheatre.org.